I really truly feel, especially in this day and age, when there's so much divide, that people have to understand that we're more alike than we are different.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Helping with Dr. Richard Schuster. Food for the brain, knowledge from the experts, tools to win at life. I'm your host, Dr. Richard. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, and whatever you do, this is the show that is going to help you become the best version of yourself. Each episode, you will hear from some of the most amazing, talented, and successful people on the planet who followed their passions and strive to help others. Join our movement to get 1 million people each day to commit acts of kindness for others. Together, we're going to make the world a better place. Are you ready? Because it's time for your Daily Helping. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Daily Helping Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Richard, and we have an awesome guest to share with you today. His name is Erik Cabral, and he's the founder of the media agency On Air Brands, the innovative networking and podcasting event PodMAX, the real estate investment company Mindado Investment Group, host, co-host, and producer on multiple shows, Entrepreneur Circle, Capital Hacking, On Air Brands Live, Cashflow Ninja, The Hidden Entrepreneur, and True MultiFamily. With multiple businesses, partnerships, and podcasts, Erik is the quintessential serial entrepreneur who spends much of his time helping others grow their businesses, brands, and reputations. Erik, we're going to have a fun show today. Welcome to the Daily Helping. It is great to have you here.
It's great to be here, Dr. Richard. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So before we even get into all of these different things and awesome things you're doing, I want to peel back the onion a little bit, find out your superhero origin story. So talk to us about what put you on the path you're on today.
Yeah, I was in corporate America for over 20 years. And I was doing the daily grind. I was doing the cube life thing as expected. We grow up in an industrial sort of system, and that was all I knew. I was in the matrix and didn't even know it. So then I was being laid off for the second time. Always say I was blessed only twice in my 20 plus year career. And I started reviewing, auditing, like looking into my life. Why am I unhappy? Why do I have all this success? Because even though I was being laid off, I had an offer, many offers on the table. One in particular was well worth, like over 6 figures, and my career was flourishing, but I just didn't have fulfillment in my life, and I was heavy, and I felt depressed, and my wife was pregnant with our second, and I was concerned, for just everything, just stressful, and stumbled upon a book, like I like to call the Purple Pill, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was listening to the book on the way to my soon-to-be done job, and that was it, brother. That changed everything for me. It changed my path, my life, the way I thought, the way I think, and just opened the doors to everything that I'm experiencing now. So
I love that. So Robert Kiyosaki was the Morpheus to your Neo, very, very clearly. And your story is so, this is an archetypal theme that I hear with so many entrepreneurs. They had this great opportunity or great job, but the description, the heaviness is one that so many people tell me, because it just feels like there's a big giant rock on their chest. And when they unplug themselves from the matrix, if you will, it just seems like there's no limit to what can get accomplished. So, I love that this theme is alive in you. And so let's flash forward a little bit. So you're reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert has got you all fired up. What happens next?
Yeah, it was just, I always say, the the eureka moment for me, as he was talking about like the 4 quadrants and talking about, ESBIN, where, you're not ESBIN, but, you're either an employee, or you're a business owner, you're an investor, I'm drawing a blank, but he's giving you all the sort of categories that we live in. And if you're always, self-employed is the other one. I was like, I'm going to be in every, I want to be in every quadrant. I want to move out of the employee one because there's less control over my life. And as I started to understand, this is why business owners become investors, or self-employment, is definitely the next step for me in terms of like where I want to go next and how I want to start to explore life and continue to grow as an individual, and then also help my family, right? Because when you're working in a job, you're basically building someone else's dream. And that I didn't understand, right? I was always like, I bleed corporate blue, or whatever the corporate colors were. I was and still very loyal to whatever I'm doing and to people. And I realized if I take all the energy that I've been doing for them for years, right, with barely, a pat on the back, right, and do for myself, do for my family, what will happen? What if? What if, right, Dr. Richard? So I'm like, hey, let's talk about it. My wife and I, the CEO of the house and this business here, she's like, you have my blessing, and I trust you, and I trust your energy and your passions, and that you will go do that, and it'll be amazing. Here's the magic that no one ever tells you about, Dr. Richard. It's not even the magic. It's really the reality of it. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time, secret, which is why people don't do it, right? Because it's too hard. And the thing that was the next aha moment throughout the journey was I was very accustomed to and understood very well working hard produced results. But the side effect of that is your health, your mental, spiritual, your health of everything holistically suffers if you're just concentrating on finance, wealth, creating money for time. And the great thing is, recently I heard James Clear from Atomic Habits, the author of Atomic Habits, say entrepreneurship is personal development and self-improvement in disguise. Like, no one tells you that. Like, you need to work on yourself in order to have success in life. And thank goodness, because who knows, I'd probably be in the hospital. I'd probably like have health issues. I'd have tons. I'm this is the healthiest I've ever been, the happiest I've ever been, because I'm stacking all the chips and not just worried about stacking the financial chips. Spiritual, mental, health, everything, all at the same time. Family.
I love that for so many reasons. And I think it is something that people miss the boat on a lot of times. I think a lot of people too will believe they want to start a business for money. And there's nothing wrong with, bettering your family financially, of course, right? Like we're all on board with that. But I also think there's something to be said about knowing your why. Why are you building this business specifically? What does it do for you? What does it do for your soul? How does it align with your values? And from the money standpoint too, people don't talk about, what's your number? Like what would be the number that would accomplish those things and allow you then to, instead of spending all your time just going after more, spending more time with your loved ones, improving your relationships, working on your health, hitting the gym, doing all those things. So the balance you're describing really resonates strongly with me, and I love that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It's critical, and a lot of people don't talk about it, or we don't talk about it enough.
Hey guys, Dr. Richard here. For the past 7 years, I've been privileged to bring you incredible guests who are changing the world and can help you become the best version of yourself. I'm really excited to share with you a new quiz that I created based on my clinical training that will curate for you a custom list of my top episodes and actionable strategies to help you wherever you are on your journey. All you need to do is go to drrichardschuster.com to take it, and it's 100% free. You'll be taking the next step on the journey to unlocking the power of you, and I can't wait to see where you'll go. I think the pandemic has shifted so many things for us. I think one of the things that is good that's come out of this pandemic, because there has been some good, is that mental health isn't a buzzword anymore. People really are starting to wrap their mind around, that these things are important, which is so great because, given the profession that I was in and, my training, there are people like us who have been screaming to the rafters for decades. You got to have balance. You got to take self-care days, and this was all kind of poo-pooed as nonsense. Now we know. And the pandemic, I think it's a good segue as well, because, we're talking about, you hear the great resignation and people are refusing to work in these corporate environments anymore. You did it a long time ago. But, one of the things that is amongst the many things that you do, and we don't have time to talk about them all, but I think PodMAX is something good to talk about. And I think podcasting in general, it is something in the hundreds of episodes that we've done, we've actually never had an episode talking about why you should podcast. And so long overdue, and I think you'd be about, the best person in the universe to share with us some of the information surrounding that. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you roll with that, because I think this is really vital and important stuff in what's going on in the world today.
Yeah, I think we're in like a renaissance. We're in an age where people, I'll liken it to the website era, when everyone started to realize they needed a website, right? And this is, I'd say, in the 90s, early 90s to mid 90s, where people started to gain awareness of it. But until, the little dogs were doing it and realizing, okay, this is the new business card, right? So then they would go to networking events and they're like, hey, go to my https://www, right? Before we knew how to just say .com. And then corporations started to pour money into building websites. And back in the day when, the 90s, it was the Yahoos, right? People would think, oh, the internet, it was AOL.com. And that was it. Like, no, that's not the internet, folks. So then everybody started to pour money in dollars, and now everybody has a website. We know it's part of business. I really feel like this is the time now where people are beginning to realize it's critical and necessary to have a podcast if you have a business. And you can have it for many, many reasons. I know there are a lot of people, there's a percentage of people out there that are like, I want to be the next Rogan or the next Tim Ferriss. I want to start a podcast as the business, right? That's a different angle, and it's a different strategy. But we work with clients, and we have to, and a lot of them, hopefully, they come to us understanding already that they have a business, it's successful, and now they're ready to produce and launch a podcast, because they have to, in this day and age, give people what they expect, which is people want to know who's running the business, right? People want to know the story behind the logo. They want to know who's the people they will potentially work with, right? Or, what's the culture of the company? What's the driving mission? What are they passionate about? Who is the brains behind the operation, right? So that is a nice way to make an introduction to everything that makes your business successful, right? In relationships mainly, because now you're putting out content about you and what you're built and what you're doing and how you're helping people. And then you're connecting with potential team members, future people that will work with you, right? And help you in your mission. And then you're also teeing up a conversation with a future client, and not just a future client or customer. You're also planting the seed for potential new partnerships, right? Sponsorships, people who want to work with you or join or buy the company, whatever it is. If you don't have a podcast, how do you create the door for people to walk through, right? A website, we all know that's been around for decades. This is the new vehicle, the new way to introduce yourself to the world and literally let them hear your voice, through podcasting and your personality and everything that people want to know and expect to know in this day and age.
I love that you said that, because I would hear people say, a number of years ago, if they don't have a website, I can't take the business seriously. Right?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you have a website? That's really weird. And now we're moving into this era. And I think you're right, but I think you said something that was really interesting. It stands to reason, yes, if you've got a brand and you've got a podcast and you're out there, it will do for you in a lot of ways what a book will do for you. It makes you an authority figure. lets people know you a little bit. But the thing that's interesting you mentioned is the culture piece. And I hadn't really thought about it in those terms, but it makes perfect sense because particularly millennials skew more this way, that they really only want to do business with or work for companies or brands that are socially conscious, that are value driven. And so the podcast, it's not a Trojan horse. That's the wrong word. It's a window. It's a window into the soul of that organization. And I think that is so very important. So very important.
It is. It is. And, well, we work with small to mid-sized businesses, so, like 1 million, 10 million in revenue, whatever it is. So I have access to the founders, right? Mostly. And that is the story. And that is the mission that I always push for them to drive, because it's like, if you're true and you're genuine, you really, really, truly want to help people with your business, right? You created a business for a reason, like you said earlier. Maybe it initially was for money. But eventually, if you're an ever-evolving entrepreneur, business owner, you want to help people on a much, much deeper level, right? Holistically, just help. And how do you do that, right? You create your own channel, and I'm in real estate, right? In investing. And that industry tends to skew older, right? The investors themselves. So I remember when I started several years ago, I would have to liken social media marketing, not just podcasting, but the whole ecosystem, the whole marketing wheel, that in order for them to understand it, Dr. Richard, was you have to think of YouTube and Facebook and Instagram as ABC, NBC, CBS, because these are the marketing channels that people are paying attention to now. They're not watching all the major networks anymore like they used to. And you also have to be building the road for the next generation of people that will be investing and spending money, in your business. So they start to understand it. And I think, as, I'll categorize them as baby boomers, are starting to, understand it. They start to invest in all these newer marketing tactics. But one thing I want to highlight, though, Dr. Richard, is that the main reason that I do it, and the main reason that I think a lot of people should do it, is to not only make people aware, like I said, of what you do and what you do in your business and the value you provide, but also to build your reputation, and then also to create deep, meaningful relationships with people. There is no other way to do this other than podcasting that I'm aware of, because how do you have an hour-long conversation with a thought leader, somebody that could easily be your mentor, that will make you ridiculously successful? How do you gain access to them without paying tens of thousands of dollars in a coaching program? Podcast. Would you like to be a guest on my show? And 99.9% of them will say yes. It's amazing.
It's very true. And I think you touched on something, but I want to dig deeper into it. You said that, a podcast can make people aware of you. And we did a good amount of time talking about how a podcast can enhance an existing business. But talk to us about, let's say somebody either wants to start a business, go out on their own, or they're reasonably comfortable in their own job doing what they're doing, they like what they're doing. Talk to us about why they should start a podcast.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of people there, right? The ones who have a job and maybe want to start a podcast, maybe for their side hustle, or maybe a business owner who's early stages of building a business, trying to figure out where they fit in the market. Those are people that potentially need a podcast. So I'll talk to the latter first. So the people that have a business and it's sort of in the early phases of startup mode, I highly suggest, and this is what I did, start a podcast now, because you are documenting your journey. You're giving people a peek into your world. And here's the really cool thing about it, Dr. Richard, is that you can go back in time and listen to your early days as a startup. And then you start to understand and realize, and it's a wonderful way to learn through your own content, because I'll tell you that I go back, even though it could be painful for us and for most, and listen to yourself and you're like, wow. And you could celebrate that win. my goodness, I didn't know what I was talking about back then. And that's okay, because everyone, and you start to mark like the milestone. Look what I've become and what I'm becoming, because it's a continuous journey of the growth and development. But the thing is, people love watching works in progress and befores and after. Like that is why like home improvement shows exploded, decades ago, where people want to see before and after. I mean, it's compressed in time, but documenting your journey through a podcast is so beneficial on so many levels. I would recommend any early startup business owners use it as such. But then the people who are in a W-2 and have a side hustle, it's a great way to carve out that and start to shine and develop that character outside of who you are by the water cooler. You are also this three-dimensional person that does, like wood carvings, or you knit, or you have an Etsy. You have something where you want to like start to develop a brand outside so that people see that you are three-dimensional. And then when it's time, because that business has grown to a point where you can actually exit and leave your job, you've already built a brand. You've already built and you use the podcast as one. I'm not saying podcasting is the be all and end all. It's one piece. It's one spoke on the marketing wheel. So, but at least you get the ball rolling so that you are set up for success once you're ready.
And the landscape of podcasting is evolving really more rapidly than any industry I've ever been exposed to. And it's crazy. And so I'm a few years into my journey, but for somebody listening to this, like, all right, Erik, you've sold me. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go for it. I want to start a podcast. Give us a few tips, some do's, and in particular, give us some don'ts about starting a podcast.
Don't create a podcast. This one's huge. Strictly for the vehicle to sell and close. If you do that, you won't have a long life, and your show won't have a long shelf life. Why? Because if you are using it as a vehicle to be introduced to people, and then you're going to sell them, and that's your sole goal and reason why you created the podcast. If you've ever heard of the term commission breath, basically usually applies to anyone in sales, mostly like a used car salesman. People are going to smell it through the Zoom. They're going to smell it through the microphones, because you're not coming correct. You're not being a genuine individual that actually gives a crap about people in their lives. And you're not thinking about your product or service as something that could potentially help someone, because then you wouldn't just be shoving it down their throats, right? Force feeding them something that they may not necessarily need, right? We only talk to people that we know and genuinely feel like we can help you. And if it's not us, because we're out of your budget, happy to make an introduction to someone else, because we have an abundance mindset, right? We don't live in a scarcity sort of world. So that I highly recommend. If you start a podcast, do not start it solely for the purpose of selling and closing a deal, because that is a no-no, and you make us look bad at podcasters.
So that's a big no, and I love that. And I had never heard the term commission breath, but I laughed under my breath as you said it, because it's so very true. And even this is something I've noticed as well. There are certain podcasts, and there's nothing wrong with sponsors. You could choose to have sponsors. I've always chosen not to, but if you have the wrong messaging in that, I think that can also derail your show. And I think people, podcasting to me it's about the long game. It's about building the trust and building the relationships, and not about, hey, let me quickly just put this out and blast a product down somebody's throat. So I love that you said that. I think that that's refreshing and important for anybody to know who's starting a show. So we've gotten the biggest no out of the way. Give us a few yeses. Give us a few of these awesome Erik Cabral tips that somebody could use.
I am going to state seemingly the obvious. Please don't get hung up on the equipment or the method of uploading files. Don't get caught up in the technicality of it, and just understand and know that I'm just going to start, right? So I'm currently writing a book, and it's similar to anyone who's writing a book or anyone who's ever thought about it. You don't want to worry about, okay, where am I going to post it? Is it going to be who's going to publish it? Blah, blah, blah. All these things don't matter. Just start writing. And in this case, just start recording, right? So you can do it as simply as lifting up your phone, opening up the voice memo app and start recording your thoughts, getting the feel of your brand and what you're going to deliver and how you're going to deliver it, and get the cadence of what your show could potentially be, at the very least. And then you can start gaining some confidence. I wouldn't recommend listening back to it, but it's right away because you might stop yourself from doing it. Maybe sharing it with a loved one or someone that you trust that will give you honest feedback, right? But then if you are confident enough, and this is how I started, just literally the Anchor app, who's now owned by Spotify, is a free platform and a free app on your phone, Android or iPhone, doesn't matter. You download the Anchor app and you can literally record a podcast episode and they will upload it for you. It doesn't get easier than that. And that's how I started if you listen to my first 1 or 2 episodes, I'm literally walking around in my basement, Dr. Richard, and I'm like talking into my phone as if I'm talking to myself. And it was like, this feels good. This feels right. All I'm doing is sharing ideas. I'm sharing experiences. And that's the other thing, please. If you're going to create content, share from your experience. Do not share things I wouldn't recommend. You can do it, but I would only recommend you share things that you've experienced, share things that you've learned, share things that you know can help people because you went through it, right? Versus just echoing or mimicking what someone else has told you that it worked for them. You can mention it, but always give the caveat that like, hey, I haven't experienced this, but my friend XYZ. So things like that. Don't get caught up in the technicality. Just start recording. So you don't get fumbled. Write down an outline of your thoughts before you hit record. Like, here's some topics that I'd like to discuss, and then just start riffing off those topics. And trust me, if you're made for this, you'll enjoy it. It'll be a lot of fun.
Amen. This is, and we're coming to the end here, but you're one of the co-founders of PodMAX, which is really an awesome platform. Take a minute, tell us about it.
Yeah. So currently, PodMAX in its current form is metamorphosizing, right? So we were running events, we were running live events and virtual events to get podcasters and entrepreneurs in the room, but we're currently retooling and remodeling what that's going to look like. So the main thing that we talk about and the main thing that we do for people and anyone in the audience that needs help in the podcasting space is, On Air Brands produces and creates podcasts. So people who need a podcast, thinking of one, need someone to bounce ideas off of and then eventually launch it. That's what we do at On Air Brands. And we really, truly love doing it because we're built very streamlined, so that people who are trying to create this and don't know how to do it or they usually have a business, Dr. Richard, and they understand, I'm not going to build a podcast team or social marketing team. Let's just let them do it. So that's how we really empower and help people.
I love it. Well, speaking of helping people, we are at the end, Erik, but as you know, I ask everybody who comes on this show one question, and that is, what is your biggest helping, that one most important takeaway for somebody listening to this that you want them to really nail?
Yeah, I really truly feel, especially in this day and age, when there's so much divide, that people have to understand that we're more alike than we are different. And we can come to the table by learning about each other and honoring and celebrating each other and our differences. And, you can do that by just reaching out to people and just having empathy for people so that you understand where they're coming from. And like I said earlier, you sort of the 3-dimensionality of people, because everyone has reasons why they think or do, but we're all human and we're all just here to gather and help each other and love on each other. And that's truly the message that I'm trying to put out there, and really summed up through my mission in life and my company's mission, which is changing the world, making the world a better place, one mic at a time. And that's really the driving force behind what I do and what everybody on my team is doing. So we want to make a difference and we want to make everything better.
I love it. Erik, where can people learn more about you online?
Yeah, you can find us at On Air Brands erikairk.com, or, you can email me directly at Erik, E-R-I-K, at onairbrands.com, and let us know how we can help you.
I love it. And we'll have everything Erik Cabral at the show notes at thedailyhelping.com. Well, Erik, this has been a fun conversation, informative and important. I knew it would be. Thank you so much for coming on The Daily Helping today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I want to take this time as well to thank each and every one of you who chose to take time out of your day to listen to this conversation. If you like what you heard, go give us a follow on Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review, because that is what helps other people find the show. But most importantly, go out there today and do something nice for somebody else, even if you don't know who they are, and post in your social media feeds using the hashtag MyDailyHelping, because the happiest people are those that help others.